There's a point in every workout
where you have a decision to make. Do you kind of like go for it, or do you accept the suffering and maybe kind of slightly back off it?
and this is the moment that defines your progress.
There's trying and there's really trying. It's a subtle change, but it can be a big difference on the leaderboard or what weight's on the bar.
In this episode, I am joined by Daniel Griffin, physio and CrossFit athlete, to break down performance, mindset, and longevity, not just in sport, but for life.
Longevity. How many years have you been competing for, and how many years have you been consistently training? That is like the biggest factor of success.
We talk about what it really means to commit, how to balance training hard with a busy life, and managing training around injuries.
The truth is, bone stress injuries are due to...
Wow, that's pretty crazy. I'm Neale, and this is the Midweek Motivation Podcast.
Something that I think I've been thinking about a bit lately is in like confidence as an athlete. You know, sometimes you need to maybe hit a PB or hit something that you've been planning to hit before you can kind of start to back yourself. Like people will tell you back yourself, or they'll tell you like journal or read sports psychology books or visualization or look at yourself in the mirror. But I think you also probably need to do the thing and then see what I'm actually going to do. And what I'm setting out to do, I'm starting to do. You know, you don't want to get arrogant, but certainly, I think, back yourself. I think I sometimes struggle with maybe fully believing in myself, you know. Been chatting with some at the gym about this lately, about like, there's trying and then there's really trying. It's a subtle change, but it can be a big difference on the leaderboard or what weight's on the bar.
Yeah. And what would you say is the difference between like that really trying?
I would say that trying, everyone around you can see, oh, he's like, you know, that he or she is trying, like they're putting a good shift in. You have to train with that really trying approach too. But like whenever, especially in CrossFit, like there's always a point in the workout where you have maybe a decision to make. Do you kind of like throw caution to the wind and go for it? Or do you accept the suffering and maybe kind of slightly back off it? I find for me personally, it usually happens with like maybe 3 to 4 minutes to go in a workout. You know, I was chatting to my coach about this recently, and I think he hit the nail on the head well, is that everyone can push hard in the last minute because the finish line is coming. So psychologically, you understand, physiologically, psychologically, you understand this is not going to last forever.
Yeah.
But can you put yourself in the bin with 3 minutes to go? Like, and can you put the foot down then? And from a physiological point of view, you maximize your power output if you actually start your push earlier. Like, you don't want to start too early, obviously, like halfway through the race or halfway through the workout, but you don't want to leave it too late either, because then maybe
you're not really reaching your full potential.
That's it. Yeah. Like, obviously, you know, you might have had 10 more seconds at that pace, but you started too late and the workout's done. So yeah, look, I suppose these are the 1%ers that make a difference. Yeah.
But I guess that mindset really separates people who are champions and those who maybe don't go pro or reach like what they really could achieve.
Yeah. And I think why I love the hybrid athlete, or I love the way the fitness culture is going, whether it be CrossFit or High Rocks, is that you don't necessarily need to be a professional athlete to achieve really, really good things. One thing what I love about CrossFit, and I love about all functional fitness sports, is that people have full-time jobs or like big commitments at home, but they still make time to come in and like snatch 80 kilos or snatch 120 kilos or do the open or sign up to CrossFit events. Like, they don't let life close in on them as much. You know, I think might be easy for me to say now that I don't have kids or anything like that, but I have so much respect for people that have kids and jobs and still find time to be somewhat competitive.
They still feel like an athlete in their own way, like their own
100%
badass, really.
Exactly. Yeah, you get to kind of like express that fire within you, you know, and I think that's super important if it's at the games or it's in your local box, like, you know. I think that's what I'm striving to do, really, because I do love my job as a physio, as a CrossFit physio. I'm doing my master's at the moment, but when I'm finished that, I'll be working 40 hours a week, and I don't really intend on reducing that. I intend on like training 8 to 12 hours a week, working 40, trying to maximize both.
Yeah.
I think for me, at times, I find that once, let's say you don't enjoy your work, but your athleticism is going great, it can be a zero-sum game at the end of the day, because it's all about life. You are trying to find the balance between relationships, your work, and your hobbies. Like I find for me, I need to try have them all in balance. I will say, obviously, I do prioritize CrossFit quite a lot. Like a lot of people our age and in our environments do prioritize, yeah, their competitiveness. But like, yeah, if you're not making money from the sport, you still have to work and enjoy your work and probably push on and work as well. Like, go for roles that maybe have more income or higher positions, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, this would be a good way to segue into introducing you, Dan,
Yes.
to the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, well, not your first time on this couch,
No,
but
no,
first time
no.
on this podcast.
Yes. Not my first time in this living room.
Yeah. Again, for another podcast, just to state, it's not anything else.
Yeah.
Mate, so you did the Open recently,
Mm-hmm.
the CrossFit Open. How did you find that compared to previous years?
Um,
And how did you go?
I did all right. I did okay. I wasn't at a position where I was doing a ring muscle ups like a year ago, so to do rings was great for me, and to do them in a competitive, environment, was great. But my scores did slightly taper off. I still did quite well. I finished in the top 5% in the UK.
incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. I suppose a couple of years ago when I did the Open, or I've done the Open. I didn't do it actually last year. I did the workout, so I didn't sign up for other reasons, but CrossFit, it's kind of controversial at times, but I didn't do it last year. I didn't give my money to the company last year, but before I just scraped in, and then this year, but I got in quite easily to quarters. But as you get better, your expectations rise, and who you're comparing yourself to rises. So like even though I was in the top 5%, I was like, I'm still looking at guys who are in the top 1% or the top 2%, so you actually almost have the same feelings that you did when you just scraped in, which is probably something you need to address. But yeah,
It's that fine line where it's like you want to be proud of yourself for doing it, but then also looking at how can you improve if you want to improve.
Yeah.
Rather than letting the feeling of maybe disappointment or I wish I could have done better. I knew I could have done the push. Like,
yes.
Also be proud of like what you achieved, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, take a moment to go pat yourself on the back, or those around you who you work with, whether it be your coach in the gym or you have an online coach or whoever, or your physio. Just kind of celebrate that you've moved on, because you probably worked hard to do that, Yeah, and I think there's even good research to show in sports psychology that like taking moments to stop and kind of be grateful for how far you've come, maintain longevity. Because I do think that, like, I think there is training hacks, there is like science out there, there is some coaches are maybe better than others, but longevity. How many years have you been competing for, and how many years have you been consistently training? That is like the biggest factor of success, the biggest correlation, you could say. You have to do the 5, 6, 7, 8 years to build up that tissue capacity, build up that aerobic system. You can't really put yourself in the bin for 6 months and expect to reach semis or to go, sub 1 hour in high rocks. It takes time. It takes time,
Definitely. Well, I think a lot of my audience aren't too familiar with the CrossFit world. How would you really summarize what CrossFit is? And is it open to everyone? Is it just for the people who are genetically talented?
It's definitely open to everyone, although it doesn't look like it, and it can be quite intimidating if you stand outside a gym and look in.
But shirts off and everything.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. At times, maybe there's maybe a bit too much skin around, and I've probably been guilty of that myself. The last year, the last year, as I've gotten fitter, I take my top off less, which probably means I'm not like overheating as much. In before, I used to never wear my top, because in other sports, no, High Rocks has a culture of not wearing.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
Did you see the April Fool's Day post?
No.
Oh, it was like we're gonna add a rule, a 67-second penalty rule for people who had a shirt off or something. It's on April Fool's.
Yeah.
It's quite funny actually.
Yeah. A lot of coaches will criticize their athletes if they start with a t-shirt on and then they'll take it off mid-workout. But if it's like an 8-minute time cap, like that could be 20 seconds. Like, don't be faffing around. Like, either wear the top or don't.
Right.
You don't be stripping off when you should be cycling the barbell or doing your burpees or whatever, So what is CrossFit? CrossFit's a mix of things, and it's always developing. So new movements are always being introduced, but it's like a mixture of Olympic weightlifting, gymnastics, and endurance. That's how I would there's probably a better definition. Like CrossFit do have their own definition of it, but that's what I see it as its definition.
I agree,
You know, it's a combination of all those put into one competition, multiple events, you know, depending on the event, on the competition, you do between 4 to 8 events. And I think another way to think of it is like time domain. So like you'll be asked to do a workout that lasts 1 minute. You'll be asked to do a workout that lasts 12 minutes. That's obviously going to tax something differently.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of skill in it. I think that's probably why people think it's intimidating. And if I be controversial for a second, why I think Hyrox has boomed is because it doesn't have those barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Like CrossFit does, you know,
100%.
handstand walking, high level gymnastics. Yeah, and I think that's why maybe people think, oh, you need to be gifted to do Hyroxes. You need to be able to do those things. Or to do CrossFit, you need to be able to do those things. My answer to that is that with CrossFit, there's a honeymoon period. Like everyone, when they start CrossFit, is going to the games. Like they start watching the Netflix documentaries, they're like, I'm going to be her or him, and like they're super enthusiastic, and that's great. But that tapers off when, you know, you maybe start picking up injuries, or you start realizing that, like, although I'm working on my toes to bar, I can't do it every day because my hands are going to tear or my hands are going to get tender.
Yeah.
So you have to just stick with it, and that's when people tend to fall off.
Yeah.
Even at London weightlifting before, or men's now, whenever I would ask people like why did they go from CrossFit into Olympic lifting, it's because they were like, oh, the gymnastics was just boring.
Really?
Yeah, because what happens is that, like, if you want to work on your gymnastics as like maybe someone who's new in CrossFit, you have to do like sessions where you're not going to be sweating loads. You're going to be spending 20-30 minutes working on technique, where people that only have an hour to train or even less, they want the high endorphins, intense session. A good coach can do both, though. So,
Well, see, I would say the same thing about Olympic lifting. If you're learning that, there's going to be sessions where you're not, a lot of sessions where you're not lifting heavy.
Yeah.
It's all about technique.
I probably need a bit more of them, actually. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think, interestingly, Olympic lifting is a good example of the same thing. You're not going to go in and max out every day or try hit a PB. You're going to have to do like technique work and speed work and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you stick with it, that's what the stuff that reaps the rewards.
Definitely.
In CrossFit, it's the exact same, but some people just fall off. But listen, that's as long as they keep engaged with fitness, that's fine.
I'm really confused, like, on how the progression structure works with CrossFit. So you have the open, and that's the first thing that everyone does.
Yeah.
A lot of people do it for fun.
Yeah.
But people who want to progress, they have to get into a certain percentile.
Yeah. It used to be the top 10%, which used to be a real badge of honor. Now every athlete that moves on to quarters is a decent athlete. Before, it used to be the top 10%, so like everyone was really good.
Yeah.
Now it's top 25%. And that means you can kind of game workouts. So for example, if a workout is like 8 minutes long, but it ends with ring muscle ups, if you do all the workout and then you only do one of the, let's say, 20 ring muscle ups,
Yep.
you're going to make it. So like it means you might only need like one repetition of the high skill movement to move on. But then you're going to be extremely bottlenecked in the next stage. But
Okay.
it makes it more inclusive. There's pros and cons to it.
Yeah. And so that getting to the top 25%.
Yeah.
And then it's the CrossFit quarterfinals
Yes.
after that. And that's like a proper event rather than like the open where people just turn up for a session at their CrossFit gym.
It depends on the gym. Like Shapesmiths in Clapham, like they have numerous athletes that make quarters. So
Yeah.
they had like quarters classes. That's the first time I've seen that. Like it being such a big gym and such a big CrossFit gym that they had quarterfinal classes. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, most gyms will like organize their open, like all the WODs of the day or the workouts that day will be the open, and then quarters will be for the athlete. Like the gym will obviously facilitate it and help them, but the athlete will kind of organize what time they're going to do it and stuff. It's online as well.
Oh, really?
When I did this 2 years ago as well, I think it was 5 or 6 workouts. It was only 4 workouts this year, and the workouts were a bit more accessible, actually. There was strict handstand push-ups, which maybe would have bottleneck some people who just made it in. You know, they just got into the percentile. But no, the workouts were more accessible, even slightly more accessible than the open, because there was rings in the open. So ring muscle-ups in the open. So,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. And then so what's the percentile that go on to the next stage after that?
That's a good question. I think it might be the top 2%. The top 2% that move it on to
Quite a big
semis.
jump from 25 to 2.
Right, it is. I think it's like the top 2%. It might be a bit more, but there's also in-person semifinals. So this is where it kind of gets a bit more complicated, and this is where like it's like proper
Yeah.
athletes, like kind of semi-professional. No, some Like, I would hope to make it to semis one day. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about that. Like, that's an aspiration of mine. It's not my North Star, but I'd love to do that. But yeah, you can make online semifinals, and like if you qualify that, you're going to the games.
Right.
Or each continent, and some continents will have multiple, will have in-person semifinals.
Yeah.
So either your position from the online quarters qualifies you for the in-person semis,
Yeah.
or you can qualify directly to the in-person semis through a separate qualifier.
Okay.
Flo, for example, she's going to South Korea, Far East Throwdown. South Africa have their own one. The USA has multiple. The French Throwdown would be the biggest one in Europe. Like, that is,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah. Like, RX and elite athletes who go to the French Throwdown are very, very good athletes. Yeah, I think that's probably my North Stars, to compete in the RX level at the French Throwdown.
Okay. So they got the RX level, and then what was the level that you were at, or what do you normally compete at?
Yeah, so that's a good. So traditionally it goes scaled, intermediate, RX, but now, like, and that's CrossFit. That CrossFit HQ, CrossFit Open, CrossFit Chorus, CrossFit Semis, CrossFit Games. That's all exists.
Oh, so even at the CrossFit Games, you still got scaled, and then
No, you don't. Sorry,
Oh.
no, you don't. But like, as in, that's CrossFit's 3 categories,
right.
right? So, but competitions now, they'll have scaled, intermediate, RX, then elite. What they're doing now really is they're skipping intermediate. They're kind of going, there's people who are new to CrossFit but want to compete in a competition. Then there's the RX athletes, and then there's the elite. The elites do tend to be like semi-final athletes, sometimes borderline games athletes, tend to be coaches or people who have careers that maybe they can train twice a day and stuff.
Yep.
And then the RX field is like more individuals like myself who like work full time but also train, or people who are, coaching as well and like trying to push towards the elite level.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
There's a lot. No, there's,
is a lot.
and when you're in it, it's simple.
Yeah.
But when you're not in it, it's not simple.
And then how did you get to go to the Arnold, which I saw you recently training? Because that looks sick.
That was sick. Yeah. That was like an elite RX kind of team. So my coach, I used to live in Manchester, and my coach, Will Skip at CrossFit 3D, some people pulled out of a team. We joined the team. 2 really good. Well, 3, the 4 of us, but 3 really good athletes I got to compete with at Arnold's, and it was great.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then did you have to have a certain requirement to be like, obviously you had a previous relationship with the coach, but like as a team?
I suppose you have to kind of be able to do the movements, because like the guys are pretty, like, the guys I was competing with are great athletes, so you obviously you don't want to let them down, and they have to choose. You can't, even though sometimes, like, if one person's better at a movement, they'll carry more. Like for handstand walks, for example, the 2 guys were brilliant, so they did more of the handstand walks than I did. But yeah, everyone plays to their strengths, but you don't want to be not able to do anything. There's a qualifier for that as well. Each athlete will do their own workouts, and then like a combined score put you on the leaderboard. But someone else was in my place. I didn't know about the team, and then someone pulled out. So then they asked me to come in. Now I was more than happy to, and that happens all the time in CrossFit comps and stuff.
That's pretty crazy.
Hey, just a quick announcement before we return to the podcast. If you're someone who's been feeling a bit stuck lately, maybe you're switching careers, rebuilding your routine, or just trying to get your life together, I get it. That's exactly why I write the Midweek Motivation newsletter, where every week I share real, honest thoughts on training, mindset, and the messy process of figuring life out. Especially for guys like us, we're in our 20s and 30s, just trying to get ahead in our careers, fitness, and performance. It's short and it's personal, and it might just give you the push you need during the middle of the week when it's least motivating. You can subscribe using the link in the show notes below, or go to substack.com and search up Midweek Motivation. All right, let's get back to the podcast.
And then you had a 143 clean. It was really a power clean.
Yeah, it was definitely a power clean, and I don't mean that from a cocky point of view. It was like super tall, as in like it was 143 power clean. I was really, really happy with that. It was actually a really strange event because we had 5 minutes to build to 1 rep clean.
Yeah.
And as a typical CrossFitter, a lot of us are really good in the power positions, not so much in the strength. Well, some athletes are. I tend to power a lot of things. I am working on that, but the weightlifting viewers will be cringing at that. But
And that's your max clean you've ever done before?
Yeah.
Wow, and you power cleaned it.
yeah.
I'd say
So
150 at least.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. But CrossFitters are getting strong. Like it's now your snatch has got to be like 115 plus, and your clean has to probably be like 140 plus as well. But really, like if you want to be super competitive, it's like 120 snatch, 160 clean.
And it's different, right? It's not like weightlifting where there's weight categories.
No.
It's like, so someone like me who is naturally a smaller person, I would have to probably make up that weight somewhere else to be,
Usually the
good.
gymnastics with the smaller or lighter athletes, you know,
Okay.
like I've got to move. I don't make excuses, like, because some people say like, oh, it's CrossFit is more of a small person's or medium height person's sport. There is like biomechanics go involved in that. Like if we both have to do thrusters, my bar has to travel a much further distance than yours, even when you accumulate it over 20 reps.
Yeah.
But I think it evens. I think it evens out. Like if it's well programmed, it will even it out.
Yep.
If you're lighter, you have to also work against the big boys.
Yeah.
You know.
Seriously, I'd be really keen to actually give CrossFit a go one day. Like obviously I did a little bit when I was trying to just try the open last year, but like my time doing that was so small.
Okay.
And like I never really had time to practice
Yeah.
the gymnastic elements, which is completely new to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hated the barbell cycling. Like I could lift heavy and then put conditioning separately, but then I combine them together. I was like, oh my
Right.
God.
Is it like did you feel kind of as a maybe someone as a hybrid athlete that biased, like you kind of biased Olympic lifting? Did you feel like barbell cycling was just a bit of disrespecting? Because I've heard that people are like a burpee over a bar is an insult
I
to
think
the
I
sport.
realized I had to almost be more efficient, so I had to like
Yes.
just dial back the technique a little
Yeah.
bit. And because initially I'm like, oh yeah, okay, 60 kilo cleans, power cleans. piece of
Yeah,
cake.
yeah.
Oh yeah, when you combine the reps with everything else, it's like
Definitely,
okay,
right.
something's gonna have to change. I have to
Yeah.
be less strict in my form.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I don't really know how I feel from a longevity perspective.
Mm.
But
I
yeah.
would view them slightly differently, like going for a 1RM power clean or 1RM squat clean and barbell cycling. They're really two different things. Like obviously the idea that if your power clean gets heavier, if your top end strength gets better, it gets bigger, your barbell cycling will improve.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work out that way. Is such like obviously it probably helps it a little bit, but barbell cycling is a skill in itself, you know, being super efficient, not wasting too much time in between repetitions, you know, having good technique, yeah, being able to manage other movements in relation to the barbell cycling, like if it's burpees or if it's like if you come off, let's say, a rope climb and then you go into you're cycling a clean, well, can you like use your arms less because you've just used them in the rope climb? You know, you have to think like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's another once you open up Pandora's box, there's
Yeah. It just looks sick, and like just watching different I guess the different categories because they had different ones at the Arnold. I was like, that was pretty cool. That's probably the most I've seen in terms of CrossFit. So maybe when I retire from competition of weightlifting,
Man, I think you have a good, like, you know how to weightlift. You got a good aerobic base. The gymnastics is probably the thing you'd have to devote the year to.
yeah.
But I think you'd like it a lot. I think, like everyone, you have that honeymoon phase, then you kind of get a bit bummed out about like your progress is slow. But when you break through that plateau, which I feel like I'm kind of like coming, like I'm on the crest of a wave right now. I feel like I'm just like really improving a lot. My gymnastics is gotten to the point where it's like improving and I'm having fun with it now, and it's like very
Yeah.
CrossFit-y, you know. And yeah, me and my coach have worked really hard on that.
Yeah, I'm like always tempted like, oh, do I just pop into Shape Smith and just like, try like once, twice a week?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
I just don't want to devote time away from weightlifting because that's like what I really want to
yeah.
work on and
That's
improve.
but there's nothing wrong with that though. Then do that, because I would say like, I think CrossFit for a competitive person is all encompassing. Like I don't think you can. There'll be people that disagree with me. People will be like, "Can you do a half marathon? Well, you can do a half marathon, but can you be a CrossFitter and another sport?"
Yeah.
I think to be very good at CrossFit, you have to focus on CrossFit. Like obviously, you'll run, you'll Olympic weightlift, you'll do your gymnastics, you'll do but the sport is so broad.
Yeah.
You kind of have to eventually say, "Well, this is what I'm gonna do,"
Mm.
which is what I find interesting about athletes like yourself who do these challenges. I think it's super cool, but.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm nowhere near pro at my other stuff. Like I can't run a sub 4 marathon.
no, but it's not
Yeah.
always about that, right? It's the trying,
Yeah.
you know. But I think eventually you have to be like, maybe it's these 3 events or like this sport rather than everything, you know.
Mm. Definitely. Well, I think I should probably pick your brains now about physio, because
Sure.
that's also like half the reason why I got you on here.
Yes, yeah. Let's do it.
I think a question I thought would be a good one. With the rise of more people getting into running, more people getting into high rocks and all that, do you think that there's more people going to have more injuries, or are people just smarter in their approach? Okay, versus like people who are just doing like just strength training or just group classes or even just like people sedentary.
Do I think that more people will get injured now that they're doing like high rocks and just be more active in general?
Yeah.
I think so. Like research and science take, like I think they even say there's something like a 10-year delay. Might be a little bit less, but there's a delay in like what's evidence based and what's being taught, and then what's being in the public. I think in the public now, it's really like everyone has adopted strength training. Like everyone knows, no matter what you do, you have to be doing some sort of a resistance training. So if you're a runner, you still need to lift weights. If you're someone who likes doing yoga, you still need to lift weights.
Yep.
Gone are the days where I feel like
People just did running.
and they felt like that was enough. It's not that it isn't enough, but it kind of isn't as well. Like
Longevity again.
bone health, mitigating other injuries, like letting one system in the body recover while you simultaneously train another.
Yeah.
Things like that. I think so. I think that's a big thing, and I think hybrid sports, strength endurance sports have initiated that. I think what's really interesting is that something I'm seeing a lot with clients at the moment in one London and Fulham, where I mainly work, is people coming in that they know high rocks. No matter what way they got into it, they're in it now and they're kind of comfortable with it, and they're trying to work on their gait. They're trying to become a more efficient runner. So I'm a heel striker. I get that all the time. I'm a heel striker and I want to be more of a midfoot or a forefoot striker. And what's interesting is that like even though it's the individual's best intentions, they actually end up injuring themselves. So they'll usually get like soleus strains or calf injuries or low back injuries.
Yep.
Becoming a more efficient runner is a good endeavor. It's a good thing to do. It's increasing your cadence, working on your landing. But I think a lot of athletes just kind of rush that process. Like they just go from, okay, I usually take like 155 steps per minute, and now I'm going to increase it to 170. But they don't do the gym work to prepare their calves and their soleus to deal with that capacity. Like if you're taking 15 more steps per minute in an hour run, it's going to accumulate, right? So
Yeah.
you got to build that tendon stiffness in your Achilles tendon, in your foot in general. You've got to build that stiffness through like plyometrics in the gym.
Such a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just something we see. I see a lot and the thing I would say is that running efficiency is super important for like marathon runners or half marathon runners. But if you become a really efficient 10K runner, but then you do a high rocks and you do your sled push, you do your sled pull, you do your burpee broad jumps, you do your lunges,
Yep.
farmer's carry, do you think that's going to affect your running pattern? Definitely. Like that local muscle endurance from those movements is going to carry over to your run. So your running might be really efficient,
Yeah.
but when you start doing a high rocks where there's, other stimuli coming in, that might not carry over as well. Like you're doing 8 1Ks obviously, and like you're running a continuous loop. Whereas usually when you're racing, it's just straight, and there might be a loop back. So it's different again. So it might not be the lowest hanging fruit trying to become a super efficient 1 kilometer high rocks runner. There may be other things you can work on.
Yeah. That's interesting. Have you seen this new high rock shoe they brought out?
A high rock shoe.
Yeah. So it's Puma.
Yeah, with high rocks written on it.
Yeah.
They're actually quite nice. I do like them.
Yeah.
I do like them. Yeah.
It's the nitros, and it's like the same one I have. But
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what makes it different.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe we need to have a look at that.
Yeah, that's like obviously running shoes are such a big part of the equipment you go with now, like carbon plate, non-carbon plate. If the sole is like kind of like smooth or not,
How wide around the midfoot is as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it's more stability or more like room for your foot to propel in.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I usually let the athlete choose themselves. Like, what are you training in? Are you comfortable in it? Particularly up to races, I'm like, dude, there's no need to go changing your shoe. yeah, again, at the highest level, these things do matter.
Yeah.
But for a lot of the athletes I see, I think just trying to increase your VO2 max or get more time running, improving on the other movements, and then like how they affect your running, I think that's probably where, yeah, you're better off focusing.
So for an endurance perspective, what would be the most efficient way of running from a gait perspective?
Yeah, so they've done a lot of evidence on like cadence, so that there's this 180 steps per minute,
Okay.
but that's kind of a made up number is stuff. Like there are some very good runners who have lower cadence.
You say 180 sounds quite high.
180 sounds quite high. It does, yeah, exactly, yeah, it does. That is quite high, but that's what people seem to try. Like if you're not moving towards that, you're not an efficient runner.
Oh.
It's not necessarily true, and I think high rocks
Yeah.
again, because you do, other movements that are going to like induce local muscle fatigue on your lower limb. 180 might not be sustainable.
Yep.
So look, if your cadence is really low, like in like 150, it's worth trying to increase that slightly.
Yep.
But there's certain ways to go about that. It's not just as simple as going for a run and trying to take more steps. If your cadence is higher, your stride length will shorten, so you'll naturally start to land more midfoot. So your running economy improves. Because rather than, let's say, if you land on your heel, you're basically decelerating your body, then rolling through, and then going forward. If you land on your midfoot, you're kind of always propelling yourself forward.
So that would be ideal, going midfoot.
That would, yeah, exactly, yeah. But sometimes, if you run faster, you're naturally going to start midfoot landing, like a sprinter.
Okay,
Sprinters
yeah,
don't
yeah.
heel strike. So if you get fitter and you get faster, your gait will actually naturally start to improve.
Yep.
So it's not just about forcing yourself to land midfoot. And I also don't. It's not for everybody. Like
Yeah.
if you're going to get injured by doing that, then you have to realize this might not suit me.
Yeah. It's so funny because like running is just one of those natural movements that you just, as soon as you can learn to walk and then to run,
Yeah.
it just becomes natural and you don't ever think about technique.
No. Yeah. The runners that do have high cadences and land midfoot have been running for a very, very, very long time. They've built that calf and Achilles tendon capacity.
Yeah.
They're super like their tendons are super stiff. They're really able to just like bound off the floor, and they can do that for like 4 hours, which is why athletes who come from running backgrounds have that tissue tolerance, and they probably feel a bit more successful in their high rocks. If you come from like a field sport or a court sport or CrossFit or weightlifting, you won't have that. So you have to take the time to build that, and that's not built over 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's built over years.
Yes. Yeah. That really answered that question.
Yeah. Good.
Next one, scans. So I think it's quite common. You hear if you get an injury or you're worried about something, other people say go get a scan. I've never had a scan for an injury. Exception with broken fingers. That's
Yeah.
it. What would you recommend that?
A big thing in medical imagery is asymptomatic abnormalities, which basically means that like you have a disc bulge, or you have a tear of your labrum in your shoulder,
Yep.
or your meniscus is slightly torn here, but you are symptom free.
Yep.
It's important to drip feed that into people, that if you just do a scan on anybody, there's going to be issues. There's no one walking around that is like totally fine. There's also people that are walking around where the scans are totally clear, but they're experiencing pain. Once you start thinking about that, you're thinking, well, if the scan is clear but I'm in pain, can the opposite be the same? Can the scan be strange but I'm not in pain?
Yeah.
So scans are a tool in the toolbox. They're not the be all and end all.
Yeah.
That's kind of in a chronic pain. Like I've had this injury for 6 months. Where it's a little bit different is that like if you have an acute mechanism of trauma, or mechanism of injury. So if you're running and then all of a sudden you like hear a pop and you've torn your Achilles tendon, getting a scan then makes complete sense because there is a traumatic event.
Yep.
That's when it's a bit different. That's when scans are warranted. Do I send patients for scans quite often in the clinic? I wouldn't say I do.
Yeah.
For bone stress injuries at the moment, I definitely do, and particularly in females. I sometimes see ballet dancers as well, and pars injuries are really common in that population. Or this is something probably for your audience, runners. If you have like pinpoint shin pain, like this point right here, I get pain. It's worse at night. It doesn't improve throughout the run, and you maybe haven't been fueling that well recently, or your running volume has really spiked, and like loading and jumping, coming down the stairs is painful, that's likely your bone isn't basically recovering to the training stimulus and starting to break down.
Is that like shin splints, or what does that mean?
So shin splints shin splints, medial stress syndrome is the term for shin splints. That is like on a spectrum. You've got a fracture, and then you've got like bone inflammation.
Okay.
And shin splints is like the very beginning of it. So it's not something that you need to get a scan for.
Yeah.
But like a level above that would be like, the bone is starting to break down a little bit. There's like a bone stress reaction now.
Yeah.
That's something we send for a scan. And again, like that doesn't mean you have to stop training. It just means we need to monitor training. We need to, maybe look at your volume, maybe do some more off-beat stuff.
Yeah.
In the clinic I'm working for, London Physio, we say there's an epidemic, like in Hackney in one clinic, like it's all bone stress injuries.
Really?
Yeah, it's all bone stress injuries. And it can, like, some of my colleagues who are avid runners and they're physios, they've gotten them. Like, they can kind of creep up on you. But the truth is, like, bone stress injuries are due to a load management error. Like, something's gone wrong.
Yep.
Not to put the blame on anyone, your coach, but like there's a sense of responsibility. Where did we go wrong and why did that happen?
Yeah.
That's something we send for scans frequently.
Yeah.
As a physio. Yeah. But I think that's warranted.
Yeah, because back injuries, I think that's one of the most common things you get from lifting.
Yeah.
I've had my
Have you?
own share of back injuries. I think this is one, and it's just like it reoccurs
Okay.
over time.
Yeah.
So like just to kind of backtrack.
Yeah.
Where it first happened was like I don't know, maybe like a year into my Olympic lifting. I was actually I came to the gym feeling really good. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do more of a powerlifting like 1RM tests. Even though I'm not doing powerlifting, but like I started with deadlifts and I was gonna go squats and bench, and then like during the deadlifts, I don't know why I started at first. I think there's a reason why in powerlifting it's the last thing. But anyway, didn't get to my max, but it was like I felt something like kind of pop a bit, but it was fine. I was like, okay, all right, a little bit tight, but no problem. And then a week later, I did some back squats, tempo ones, so weight wise pretty light, but just like time and attention. And the last rep I did, then something just like snapped, and it was like the pain came instantly. Actually, fairly quick to recover because I was having physio. I was made sure I was still moving a lot, and so I was like back to Olympic lifting 6 weeks later with squatting like 8 weeks after.
Nice.
And then I hadn't really had any problems until like I don't know 2 years ago. It's just like kind of the same kind of feeling where something like pops or snaps. Same kind of feeling, but and since then I've had like maybe 3 times in like a year where it's kind of flared up. But because I know what it feels like and I know what I've done previously to kind of manage that, like I'm back to lifting like straight away. In a way. Like last time it did. Interesting. Like it happened. I was doing a snatch balance actually, and then because I was planning on doing like a clean and jerk like max, and I think I was just so frustrated because it happened like a 3rd time in a year. I was like, fuck it. So as soon as I was fine, I went for like my clean jack max, failed what I wanted to achieve. It was fine.
Yeah.
And literally like 3 days later, I did it again and I actually got a PB. I was like, okay. That was a week after that last flare up.
Okay.
My point being is I never had a scan.
Yeah. No. That's good because it does sound like the initiating injury was because of a drastic increase in your load. You said you decided to do like a 3 lift max. You try, so you might not have been preparing your body for that. You might have been super strong. You might have been like back squatting, snatching, cleaning, jerking, and then you decided to go in one day and kind of push your nervous system, push your body.
Yeah.
That, and like I think it's good to like highlight that to the patient or to the athlete. Like, we don't need a scan. Well, you could argue if you do or not, depending on the symptoms.
Yeah.
But there's the overload on the system was the reason for the pain. It was the cause of. This is what initiated all of it, rather than just like you got that injury and forget about how you got there. You have to understand how you got to this point.
Yeah.
And what sounds like, which I think people can get quite binary. It's like I'm injured or I'm not injured.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing though is that like, yes, it's reoccurring. We'd want to address that if you came to see me, but is that your bounce back is much quicker.
Yeah.
You maybe were out for a few weeks initially and then you're recovering much quicker, which is good. There's numerous reasons why that be because the injuries are less severe, but also maybe you're not less apprehensive about it. You have a bit more confidence. You have more self-efficacy, which like I feel I can manage this more. I've got tools now, and like obviously if you face a problem more than once, you get better at facing it.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. I don't know if it was wise last time lifting so heavy, so like afterwards, but I think I was just like, fuck this, I can't do it. I want to lift.
If you learn from your injuries,
Yeah.
you're gonna move forward.
And I guess this happens to elite athletes all the time, where they get injured so close to an event, but like that is everything to them. Of course, if it's too risky, then they'll pull out. But
Yeah.
they'll do whatever they can.
Lots of athletes perform at high levels with, they're not 100%. You strive to be, like the medical team and the athlete will strive to be 100%,
Yeah.
but lots of athletes do perform with maybe something going on. Maybe not acutely, like something isn't torn the day before, but
Yeah.
like it's rare to go into an event feeling 100% if you've really peaked for that event. That is the optimal goal, but don't think I'm either 100% ready for this or I'm
Yeah.
not attending or I'm not going to
Tendinitis,
perform.
a good one.
Exactly, yeah. But there's the medical team or your own team will be working on ways to facilitate you performing even if you have injuries.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that'll be part of your rehab, that'll be part of your prehab and things like that. So yeah, I think I like to use a traffic light analogy. Green is like you're ready to go, you're super good. Orange is like, you're feeling a bit achy here and there. We're working on things, but you can still perform. And red is like,
Okay.
performing is going to really put you out for the next couple of weeks. It's
Yeah.
going to really derail your year. And then there's a decision to be made.
Okay.
Hey, just a quick announcement before we return to the podcast. If you're someone who's been feeling a bit stuck lately, maybe you're switching careers, rebooting your routine, or just trying to get your life together, I get it. That's exactly why I write the Midweek Motivation newsletter, where every week I share real, honest thoughts on training, mindset, and the messy process of figuring life out. Especially for guys like us, we're in our 20s and 30s, just trying to get ahead in our careers, fitness, and performance. It's short and it's personal, and it might just give you the push you need during the middle of the week when it's least motivating. You can subscribe using the link in the show notes below, or go to substack.com and search up Midweek Motivation. All right, let's get back to the podcast.
Next question.
Sweet.
What is the strangest injury you come across?
Oh, the strangest injury I've come across. To be honest, I actually haven't come across any odd injuries.
Yeah. Maybe something you've like learnt about, perhaps, that you're like, whoa, I didn't know this can happen.
I probably can use myself really. Like I'm human, so I get injured, and it can be really frustrating as a healthcare professional if like a doctor gets sick or a physio gets injured because there's this idea because you've studied injuries or you work in that space that you're invincible.
Yeah.
No, I had to go see a physio there a couple of months ago from my shoulder, and I think this is another point we touched on recently, like what's the research saying, what's evidence-based, and then what's being, implemented into real life. And like the posture thing and like rotator cuff stuff, everyone's like this is super important, like external rotation, working on that posterior cuff. But when I went to go get my shoulder assessed, I had like an anterior cuff issue. But like because social media and because of my own biases, I was thinking along different lines completely. It was another structure in my shoulder that I needed to work on.
Yeah.
But that's, an internal rotator, something that would almost cave you in. And what's being modernized now is like...
And I think that's something that I'm going with my
I have seen your
shoulder.
rehab, yeah. What I learned from that was never take anything off the table. Like think super broad.
Yep.
And like exclude, we call them differential diagnosis, like what are the possible diagnoses here, and like think long and hard before you exclude something. And in a condition like a CrossFitter or any other lifter where it's not stopping them from, they're not in the red, they're in the orange, maybe through the rehab you try different things. You might not always catch the diagnosis in the assessment, but through the rehab things start working and things don't start working, or things are not working, and that's the line of direction, and then that informs your diagnosis. That's why I would advocate for as well is that if you're happy with your therapist, your physiotherapist, or whoever you're seeing, but you're not getting better, like speak to them, communicate with them. Don't just go somewhere else. I think there is good clinicians and there's maybe some clinicians who are still developing, but the best clinicians, the best coaches are the ones you work with.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I think,
Rather just ruling, I guess maybe ruling it out completely, saying like, oh, I've tried physio before and it hasn't worked.
yeah, exactly. Like, no, look, I get it. You can have good experiences and bad experiences. I've seen physios before. I've worked with coaches before, but like once you build a relationship with one person and you communicate honestly with them, if you're having issues with the rehab, you're having issues with it, you're giving them more and more information.
Yeah.
And then they're able to do something with that. If you keep, I think this is probably more common in the coaching side of things. If you keep coach hopping,
Yeah.
that coach can't get to understand you, because they can program for a Hyrox athlete, but they can only program for you if you spend time with them. How would you respond well to stress? What's your life schedule like? What do you like as a person?
Yeah.
The coach needs time to get to know you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I think unless you're getting injured and you're making zero progress, like give every person you work with like 6 months, I would say. You know, and you'd have a good instinct if it's not right before that.
Mm.
You know, but you have to encourage the athlete to commit to the treatment process.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's the same for coaching. You know.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the most common injuries for CrossFit athletes?
I see a lot of shoulders. I see a lot of upper limb injuries. Like lower limb injuries are super common too, but I see a lot of shoulder injuries. Like it could be rotator cuff related. It could be more instability. Maybe there could be some damage within the shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, some labral issues. What's interesting as well though is that maybe the labrum, which is like a cartilage cup within the shoulder that it keeps things suction and keeps the humerus within the glenoid cavity, maybe it's become slightly torn to facilitate the movements you do.
Okay.
You know, so it's like a sport induced injury. Like in baseball, for example, you see baseball pitchers, their shoulders look totally different to a postman's shoulder.
Okay.
But their shoulder isn't injured, their shoulder just has adapted. Structures have torn or become looser to facilitate the sport. So
Yeah.
that's where imaging again
That's
is,
interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Once you open up Pandora's box about imagery, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of shoulder injuries, whether it be due to overload or there was a traumatic event, like I went to go snatch and I dislocated my shoulder.
Yeah.
I was actually training with a guy today who had a shoulder dislocation. He was wearing straps in the snatch.
Oh.
Right? Yeah. Bar went back, shoulder dislocated forward, but severed, or not exactly severed, but compromised 2 nerves. So like lost a lot of muscle in his hand, arm was much weaker,
Really?
sensory issues.
Oh.
It would put you off snatching, right?
I think it puts me off snatching with straps.
Yeah. Do you know what? I rarely use them. I don't know if they're in the CrossFit space as much. We don't use all the toys and gadgets as the weightlifters do. I don't use them, but I can see what people do, you know. Yeah, I see a lot of shoulder injury, and that would be my area of interest, really.
Yeah.
Because I've had my own shoulder issues, like family members of mine have had shoulder issues, and I just think like if the shoulder is compromised or you've injured your shoulder, it can be really frustrating and debilitating to your daily life and to your sport.
Yeah.
Like I have colleagues and stuff who work in football or who work predominantly in field sports, and they're like they only see ankles and knees. And I personally think from a CrossFit point of view and a weightlifting point of view, I think the shoulder is probably once that's injured, it's really hard to train. You know, it's not very science based, but I think you can kind of train around a lower body injury a bit more.
Yeah.
I find once the shoulder is injured, it's you can still obviously keep training and move training around a bit, but it's tough.
Yeah, definitely. Next question.
Yes.
AI.
Mm.
Do you think that in the next 10, maybe 20 years, you'll have to adapt in your role as a physio with AI? Or do you think we're still a long, long, long way? Anything changing? So I think from a PT perspective, like, I don't think anyone's going to replace the coaching element in person and technique cues, but saying, the gym here, Fitness First, they've got machines now that can adapt it to like your heights and everything. So you create a profile and you scan, and then you can do strength tests with them. And the benefit of that is because you could do 1 rep max strength tests with these machines without putting you at risk at, say, doing like a 1 rep max squat. So you could do like a 1 rep max leg press, and it's all hydraulic base.
Yeah.
So it's just like, putting amount of pressure in.
Yeah.
chest press, lat pull down, and then it gives you
Your estimated.
exactly, and
Yeah.
then it would be part of your bio age. Essentially, it's all linked. But then they've got this AI to basically give you a program that you can do in the gym, and obviously you can put preferences and all that. And then there you go. There's a program already made for you. You don't have to be a PT and to do that. And obviously, you can type in ChatGPT, what's the best 5-split program for building muscle, for example. So obviously that element I have to start thinking about, how can I adapt my role. What would you say for a physio perspective?
Yeah, that's really interesting that you talk about the stuff they have in the gym down the road. Yeah, so when tools like that come in, you have to question the validity and the reliability of the tool. So basically, its accuracy at measuring what it's measuring and its consistency of measure. Again, once you start thinking about these things, you're thinking what it's telling me, am I taking it as gospel? Am I oh yeah, this is the gold standard, this screen in whatever gym is totally accurate. It's well, if you begin a program based off inaccuracy, where's that going to put you? So running apps, marathon, there's apps out there that people use to program for their marathons.
Yeah, runner.
Example one, they don't take into account a lot of things that are important for programming.
Okay.
And sometimes it can lead to overload, bone stress injuries. If they're not picked up by a healthcare professional, they can become quite serious. But this is all because you started off a program with using a tool that was inaccurate.
Yeah.
But what is happening is that AI tools are being assessed for their accuracy, and they people are doing research on them, and that's what's being implemented into healthcare now. So we use it for note taking, quite common. We can you speak into a platform, and then it will help you create your notes. I suppose that's still practitioner generated.
Yep.
I do see people on Instagram. I think there's an endurance cyclist or an Ironman. He's using ChatGPT to program his all of it, and it's an experiment for him.
Yep.
But what's really cool there is that he's using a Garmin, or he's using heart rate monitoring data and then inputting that into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So
okay.
he's giving it information. What ChatGPT or what the AI tool does with it is another thing. It's definitely coming into our field.
Yeah.
100% coming into our field, and I think we're all going to have to slightly adapt. I still think people, and I personally think that although things are accelerating, AI is accelerating a podcast, for example, everything is short form content now, but people are still interested in sitting down and listening to it for an hour.
Yeah.
I actually think just as quickly as that's growing, this community and people still want authenticity.
Yeah.
They still want a person's opinion. And if that person is medically trained or whatever, or just in general, they'll still want a person's opinion, not just AI's opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's going to become part of both of our fields. I think we can use it to our advantage. I wouldn't be overly worried. I think it'll just be another tool.
I think it's just more about the education element, right?
Yeah.
Educating the people who are using these, treat them as a tool and be aware of, that this is not going to be entirely accurate.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I certainly think it's going to be part of our profession, but I think the best programs are written by people.
Yeah.
And I still think the best rehab is done when an athlete and a physiotherapist work in conjunction. And if AI is making the process more efficient, that's great for both. I think we're a long way from someone who is really trying to achieve a top level goal, or someone's got a serious issue and AI solving it all for them.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know for me.
Yeah.
In future. I've remember my question. We can make this the last one as well.
Sure.
Is there anything that you do on a daily or a weekly basis that's helping you, reducing risk of injury or feeling good for your workouts or for just daily life and longevity?
Yeah, so it's nothing fancy, and I think it's not an ice bath, it's not compression boots, it's not a supplement, it's the basics. Really, really good communication with your coach, whether that's the teacher in your yoga class or your online coach that you're working with, giving them as much information as you can about how you're feeling, how training is going, how you're recovering between sessions, because if they're programming for you, they're the input, you need to tell them the output.
Yeah.
So really good frequent communication with your coach. And then I would say sleep. You prioritize sleep. And people don't prioritize sleep because sleep is hard, actually. You have to be motivated to go to the gym. You also have to be pretty motivated to go to bed before 10. And I'm not saying shut my phone off an hour before I go to bed. I sleep pretty well. That's not the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But there's wind down routines. But like you need like, and I also feel like getting up early is what people can do that when they have to. A bit like if there's a finish line in sight, people can do that. But going to bed early is not an easy thing. And I think if you're sleeping well and if you're on a good program where you're in communication with your coach and your coach is like using the information you're giving them, they're the two things you need to hit. Like you can do compression boots and you can go to the sauna and do the ice bath, and if those things are great if they make you feel good, but they're never ever gonna outdo a good night's sleep and good programming.
Yeah.
And like you can't sell that either. You can't.
It doesn't sound sexy.
No, there's no
or-
website for
Yeah.
that. Like as in, and you can put that in a bottle and sell it for £20 a month. But that's what you need to do.
Yeah. Literally the basics. Wise words from Dan, the physio. Yeah.
That's
Thanks so much for being on the Midweek
Yeah, no
Motivation
stress, man.
podcast.
Delighted.
Yeah. Where can people find you for physio or learning more information?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm physio with Daniel. And then clinic-wise, I'm working in One London and Fulham and Liverpool Street with LDN London Physio.
Nice. Awesome. Everything will be linked in the show notes. Thanks
Sweet.
again for coming on.
No worries. Thanks, guys.